Tactical Officer's Log. Stardate 509.76.27. Finally, the order we've been waiting for came down from command. I never heard sweeter words than when Lieutenant Talar said, "Operation Dambuster is a go." The atmosphere on the bridge was just electric. Just a few moments ago, the atmosphere was positively languorous, as it has been for the past few weeks. Proceed to Attila at maximum warp, and so we did, only to arrive and spend weeks endlessly patrolling the same old routes and practicing the same damn drills over and over until it's all I can think of. Even when I sleep, those same orders echo through my head. At least now, I can put those mind-numbing drills to good use. The captain assures us that this would just feel like a continuation of the training. There's nothing that we haven't trained for. Even so, I feel tense, alert, ready to go at any moment. But I'm not sure if it's fear or excitement. When Dominion forces began arriving in the Alpha Quadrant from mid-2373, it was obvious to Starfleet Command that this was a prelude to a full Dominion invasion of the Alpha Quadrant, despite the Dominion claiming that their presence was merely to provide sorely needed aid and security to its new Cardassian citizens. Given the present situation faced by the Cardassians, this was a reasonable proposition. In the last 18 months, the Cardassian Union had been brought to the brink of collapse by a brutal Klingon invasion and occupation, their once proud Starfleet brought low within a matter of days, their dreams of democracy and freedom crushed under Klingon boots. As such, regardless of any other future plans, the Dominion Task Force sent to aid Cardassia had two major objectives, which they would have to accomplish before even contemplating an invasion of the Alpha Quadrant. First was to completely drive all Klingon and Maquis invaders from Cardassian space, and secondly, to assist the Cardassians in any way possible in the repair and reconstruction of their economy and infrastructure. The Dominion completed their first objective with relative ease, driving the Klingons out of Cardassia within a few days. And while the Maquis were able to hold out for a little longer, it was only a matter of time before they were hunted down by the relentless Jem'Hadar. By September of 2373, the Dominion had completely liberated Cardassian space. Yet their next objective was not so easily accomplished. While only around a fifth of the Cardassian Union had been occupied, that fifth had included almost 50% of Cardassia's industrial infrastructure. This, combined with continuous raids and blockades by the Klingon fleet, severed vital supply lines between Cardassian core worlds and their outer agricultural colonies, which themselves were left largely defenceless against the vengeful Maquis, and so by early 2373, many Cardassian worlds were on the brink of starvation. So sorry was the state of the Cardassian economy that the Dominion began bringing vast amounts of supplies through the wormhole, chief among which were neither weapons or machinery, but seeds from the Gamma Quadrant. While Dominion replicators could be used to ward off a complete famine, Vorta planners felt that it would be best if the Cardassian economy could be restored to a self-sustaining state. These seeds from the Gamma Quadrant had been genetically modified by the founders, were both hardy, able to adapt to any climate, and able to rapidly grow. And so in just the last quarter of 2373, food production saw a 150% increase over the total yield of 2371. With the Cardassians' food supply stabilised, the Dominion set about restoring Cardassia's industrial infrastructure. This proved to be a far greater challenge. Before retreating from their Cardassian holdings, the Klingons stole as much equipment as they could lay their hands on, and attempted to destroy what they could not take with them. As a result, the shipyards of Kelvus, Monarch, and Torros had been utterly ransacked and would require significant effort to restore them to working order. Further complicating this issue was the significant differences between Cardassian and Dominion technology. Where the Cardassians employed vertical compression warp cores, the Dominion employed cyclic matter annihilators. The Cardassians used spiral wave disruptors, but the Dominion used polaron phasers. And while the Cardassians operated on isolinear processors, the Dominion made use of alpha crystal processors. The issue was not just that Cardassian technology was less advanced than that of the Dominion, but that Cardassian technology was largely incompatible with that of the Dominion. As a result, there was little industrial aid the Dominion could offer, other than basic raw materials. This also led the Vorta planners to realise that establishing a logistical foothold in the Alpha Quadrant would not be as easy as they had initially believed, and for the time being, the Dominion would have to rely on continued supply convoys from the Gamma Quadrant, at least until the Cardassians' industrial capacity had been restored. Despite these difficulties, with Dominion assistance, Cardassian industry rapidly recovered, with the shipyards at Kelvus, Monarch and Torros fully restored to operation by late September, and the Omekla, Manora and Tavak yards doubling in their output, allowing the Cardassians to rebuild their crippled military. This incredible turnaround did not go unnoticed by Federation analysts, who were growing increasingly concerned by the rapid recovery of the Cardassian military, which indicated that the Dominion far surpassed the Federation in industrial might. As war with the Dominion seemed ever more inevitable, Starfleet Command concluded that its first priority should be to interdict and degrade this capacity as much as possible, while simultaneously working to increase their own output. To accomplish this, Starfleet Command developed a plan to degrade Dominion production capacity in two ways. The first was to authorize Captain Sisko to mine the Bajoran wormhole, thus cutting the Dominion off from its Gamma Quadrant supplies, and second, to attack and destroy the Cardassian shipyards, and thus slow the growth and mobilization of the Cardassians. If both these objectives could be achieved, it would buy the Federation and Klingons valuable time to mobilize their own fleets and begin building up their own numbers. The officer chosen to lead this raid was Admiral Owen Paris, an experienced commander who 30 years prior had been instrumental in charting this region. He also had a wealth of combat experience, serving during the Battle of Salva 15 years before, and was currently serving as the commander of Anti-Borg Task Force Alpha. There was no one more suited to the job at hand. Tasked with the destruction of a major enemy facility, Admiral Paris went about carefully planning the operation down to the finest detail. The first thing he had to decide was the target. There were two major Cardassian shipyards along the border, at Kelvus and Torros. Paris decided upon the latter, since the Dominion fleet was massing near Kelvus, likely ready to attack Deep Space Nine, while the left wing of Fleet Group Gamma was concentrated further away at Rondak and Atabar Prime, and thus it was Torros that would be Paris's target. The Torros system is a binary star system composed of a Class A and Class B star. With 7 planets, Torros 1 and 2 are highly geologically active and due to the incredible surface temperatures are rich in rare elements and minerals, which are processed on the Nor-type station Karak Nor. These ores are then used in the shipyards of Torros 3, which are in turn supplied with more common elements from the strip mines of the planet's surface, while Torros 4 is the site of a trading outpost which processes ore from the asteroid belt. Orbiting the gas giants of Torros 5 and 6 are gas dredgers, which harvest deuterium and other elements from the gas giants. All of these are supplied energy from 6 solar arrays, which draw energy from the binary stars. While not traditionally fortified, the system is surrounded by hundreds of sensor satellites, which not only detect ships entering the system, but also actively track ships within the perimeter, meaning that once one enters the system, there is nowhere to hide. Additionally, the system is protected by 40 Jem'Hadar ships, in addition to the Cardassian 10th Order currently being outfitted there. Despite the substantial Dominion presence, Paris was allowed no more than 25 ships, since Starfleet, knowing that they would be facing a superior Dominion force, planned to implement a managed retreat and was reluctant to overcommit. As such, Starfleet Command was concerned about losing too many ships too early in the war. However, they did concede Paris authority to select any ship in the fleet for his raiding party. Thus, Paris went about assembling a force while only a fraction the size of most fleets, far exceeded them in both speed and firepower, consisting of 24 of the most advanced ships of the time, led by the USS Sovereign, along with 3 Akiras, 4 Norways, 2 Intrepids, 8 Sabres, and 4 Cheyennes. Even so, he would have a tough time taking on the Jem'Hadar with such a small force, let alone destroying an entire shipyard. Fortunately for Admiral Paris, General Martok released 2 of his most elite wings to join the raid, giving Paris a total of 44 starships to conduct his raid. Critical to the success of this raid, codenamed Operation Dambuster, was the element of surprise. Therefore, throughout December of 2373, Paris began to discreetly mass his ships in the Volterra Nebula, where they would wait on constant standby, ready to strike at a moment's notice, all while going unseen by the Dominion. Until that moment came, Paris would have to continually test, revise, and retest his plan as the fleet practiced endless battle drills and combat exercises while waiting in the nebula, until every single movement and shot was precisely choreographed. Paris's plan was built around a series of hit-and-run attacks designed to disrupt and disorganize the enemy defenses, drawing them away from the primary target, the shipyards over Torros 3. Once this was accomplished, the heavier ships would move in and deliver their payload of quantum torpedoes. After waiting for weeks, Paris finally got his chance on January 9th, receiving a signal from Deep Space Nine at 0416 with a single code word: Flood, confirming that the Dominion were moving on the station, beginning the war. Without hesitation, Paris gave the order to begin Operation Dambuster, with the fleet getting underway at 0420, heading for Torros at maximum warp. The first wave arrived at Torros at 10:08 ship's time, and at the same moment, over a dozen light years away, Dominion ships opened fire on Deep Space Nine, firing the first shots of the war. But mere moments later, Paris would fire the first Federation shots, and he planned to make them count. Indefatigable led the charge, piercing through the sensor net and opening fire on the gas mines of Torros 6. The Dominion was swift to respond, sending a Jem'Hadar battle group to intercept. While the Dominion attack ships alone were no match for Indefatigable's squadron, the larger battlecruiser bearing down on them could not be easily dismissed, and so they withdrew, making sure that the Jem'Hadar stayed on their tail. And so when Resolute arrived and began destroying the Dominion's sensor satellites, there were no Dominion ships nearby to respond, forcing another Jem'Hadar battle group to break off from its position and drive away Resolute. Again, Resolute was careful to string out this chase for as long as possible, even launching fighters to continue destroying the sensor satellites, creating the blind spot needed. Then suddenly, 20 Klingon ships decloaked in the vicinity of the binary stars and began destroying the solar arrays. However, by this point, the Vorta commander suspected there was something more to this attack, and so he only sent one battle group to intercept, keeping the fourth close to the shipyards, which he suspected to be the true target. This was an unfortunate complication for Paris, who had hoped to get a clear shot at the shipyards. However, there was a contingency for such an eventuality, to instead attack the now unguarded auxiliary facilities, since he had been ordered not to take any undue risks, especially in regard to the USS Sovereign. Despite these orders, Paris decided to continue with the current plan and attack the shipyards, leading the charge aboard the USS Sovereign, flying through the blind spot at warp speed, dropping out of warp practically on top of the Dominion battlecruiser. This risk paid off, with the Dominion temporarily scattering in panic. Paris began opening fire on the shipyards, with the Norways working to batter down their shields. But it wasn't long before the Jem'Hadar regrouped, along with several older Cardassian ships ready to confront the Sovereign. Additionally, the other Dominion battle groups broke off their pursuits and headed back towards the shipyards. While the other squadrons did their best to harass the Dominion, there was only so much they could do against the Dominion battlecruisers. Meanwhile, Paris met the Jem'Hadar, with Sovereign launching a blistering volley of torpedoes at the battlecruiser before overshooting it. The Jem'Hadar, able to match Sovereign's maneuverability, turned to engage, diverting power to their prow shields, yet as they did so, the Norways swooped to her aft, opening fire with their lance phasers, penetrating her aft shields and knocking out her engines, leaving her an easy target for Sovereign, finishing the battlecruiser with another pass. With that, the older Cardassian ships realized they had no prayer against Sovereign and scattered, leaving Paris's ships the time they needed, knocking down the shields of one shipyard before the Akira USS Nobunaga fired quantum torpedoes, shattering the facility and the ships housed within like glass. Yet as they did, another Dominion battle group arrived to engage. Again, leading with the Sovereign, Paris fired a volley of quantum torpedoes, which he knew would make short work of the cruiser. But to his shock, one of the Dominion attack ships flew directly into the path of the torpedoes, sacrificing itself to protect the cruiser. Then, as the two ships passed, the Jem'Hadar fighters continued to block Sovereign's phaser fire, while the battlecruiser landed direct hits on Sovereign. As a result, Sovereign took more damage in the exchange than her adversary and would be at a significant disadvantage in further exchanges. Yet, he had to buy time for the Norways and Akiras, which had to focus all their attention on the shipyards. As he swung round for another exchange, Paris ordered his sabres to take the lead, hoping that they might prise the fighters away from the cruiser. Yet they had no such luck. The Jem'Hadar fighters stuck steadfast to their cruiser, which easily repelled the smaller sabres due superior firepower, and so Sovereign was forced to break off, lest she lose another exchange, giving the Jem'Hadar an opening to attack the Akiras. Yet suddenly, 4 Klingon Watchers decloaked behind the Jem'Hadar, hitting them with a full volley, breaking their shields. With that, the Nobunaga launched a volley of torpedoes, destroying the battlecruiser. The remaining fighters broke off, without cruiser cover and being harried by the Klingon birds of prey. Meanwhile, the Norways and Akiras successfully destroyed 2 more shipyards, with the last 3 heavily damaged, but by now, the 2 remaining Dominion battle groups, along with several Cardassian stragglers, were closing in. Outnumbered by the incoming Dominion ships, Paris ordered his squadron to withdraw, though they did not neglect to fire one last parting volley, leaving the shipyard's shields critical. The Dominion, not wishing to allow Paris a chance to regroup, gave chase, driving his squadron away from the shipyards, yet as they did so, they left them vulnerable to the 2 intrepid squadrons, since they believed them too small to threaten the stations. Thus, they were dumbstruck as Resolute and Indefatigable launched quantum torpedoes at 2 of the shipyards. The combined energy shockwave not only shattering the 2 yards, but also disabling the last, which was caught between the 2 shockwaves and scourged by the ensuing debris. With the shipyards destroyed and Dominion reinforcements converging on the system, Paris ordered his ships to withdraw. Resolute and Indefatigable were the first to leave, blazing the vanguard, followed by the Klingons, who fanned out under cloak to guard their flanks, while the Sovereign and Akiras made for a formidable rearguard, and so the Dominion made little effort to pursue, as they were still dumbstruck by the speed and precision by which Starfleet had operated, destroying in just under an hour 6 major stations, and losing few ships in doing so, while elsewhere the Dominion had just lost 50 ships to take just 1 station. With the success of Paris's raid at Torros 3, it rendered the initial Dominion victory at Deep Space Nine a Pyrrhic one at best. Indeed, historians continue to debate to this day who won the first battles of the Dominion War, since even as the Dominion seemed to lead an inexorable advance, they failed to secure many key objectives, with Starfleet proving to be a slippery opponent. Equally, despite Starfleet frustrating key Dominion objectives and disrupting their infrastructure through the mining of the wormhole and the destruction of Torros, they would still be driven back to the very core of their territory. Yet these analyses disregard perhaps the most crucial factor of all: morale. For as Starfleet fell back, they did so knowing that they had landed the first punch, winning a victory that they could savour, even in their darkest moments, when it seemed all may be lost.